God is whose center everywhere and circumference nowhere. God, who has a center point in every single ounce of his creation, every single aspect of his creation, God has centered himself within it. And God is whose center everywhere and circumference nowhere. So there's no bounds to God. In other words, there's no circumference to keep God in. God is everywhere. It is beyond time. It's beyond place. It's transcendental. It's above all, through all, and in you all, as the Bible says in, I think, 1 Corinthians something. So God is whose center everywhere and circumference nowhere. Circumference nowhere. So there's nowhere is also what? It's now here. So God is whose center, the center of God is, where is it? It's everywhere. And then his circumference is nowhere, or it's now here, which is basically just this really sort of poetic way of saying that God is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. It's everywhere. It's everywhere you look. It's within everything you see. That God has centered himself within that. The spiritual process is coming to recognize that center point and ultimately unleash it from its bondage of material in the material plane. And we'll get into that, and this is exactly what the Jews actually believe. This is exactly ultimately what Christianity is talking about, and as I said, ultimately what the Muslims are talking about. So this point, this idea that God has centered himself within, has put an ounce or a spark or a scintilla of him within every single human being, this is what the Jews actually teach in the Chabad organization. So I just want to listen to this real quick.
All Jews are really connected to God. So he put each inside of us a portion of himself down to this world, even though it's lower and it's more filled with bad things and it's darker. He still put a piece of himself into every single Jew. What you with the Torah?
So that's what Chele Kolokam Mimal Mamish means.
Yeah.
All right. So where did Goyim fall into this? It's good to know.
They have godliness, but it's on a lower level than us.
All right.
Even though we have a higher level because we're God's chosen people.
Right.
So they're on a lower level. They're a lower level, and then there's some. They're called the Chasidei.
Right.
They are the righteous of the non-Jews.
Right.
They are on a higher level of the regular non-Jews, but not all the way up to Judaism.
Okay, so you can hear what he says there. They're basically saying that God put a part of himself, a little piece of himself, a portion of himself within every human being. Now, they go on to say it's just the Jews, which I think we all know that that's just horse apples, right? No, it's not just the Jews that are chosen one. It's not like God put himself in every single Jewish person and then forgot about the rest of like us Irishmen and Catholics and stuff like that. No, that's all hooey. The idea, the notion of the chosen people and all of that sort of stuff is insanely racist. It flies in the face of universality, for number one. I mean, this is exactly what the cube is talking about ultimately, is universal principles that are available to every single human being. End of story. Okay, so, but the important point that I'm trying to point out there is that even in Chabad school, I think that's what it is. It's like a school learning center, basically. This is what they teach children. Hey, you as a Jew, God put an ounce of him, a portion of him within you. Okay? So God is not off in some distant place. I mean, God is everywhere, so of course he is. But God is not off in some distant place somewhere that's just unreachable and untouchable to mankind. No, the whole point is that you, through the climbing the ladder of consciousness, you come to recognize that, that great mystery, that great intelligence, that great force that manifested all of creation, it put himself, a portion of himself within me. And your spiritual journey is to find that and release it from its bondage.
The Kabbalah remains a locked work that cannot be opened by the average individual.
A common understanding is that one cannot begin to study Kabbalah until you reach the age of 40.
What I mean by a locked work is that the way that it's written, the way that Kabbalah is written, it's pretty much encoded in a very cryptic language in order to keep it away from the masses. This is one of the ancient protocols of the Kabbalah was to relegate it to a very exclusive group of students. Very exclusive group of students that had gone through years of study. It was being 40 years of age, as well as being well-versed and learned in all areas of Judaism. In biblical texts, in Talmudic texts, in Midrashic texts, in Jewish legal texts. It's a person that was versed, an expert, if you will, in all of these texts, and was 40, was deemed to be appropriate to welcome into the circle of the mystics, of the Kabbalists. So it was accepted as the tradition that until one is 40 and one's mind is fully settled, it's not a good idea to introduce esoteric wisdom that might confuse or befuddle the student.
Once again, from the horse's mouth directly, what the Jews think about Kabbalah themselves, okay?
The Kabbalah remains a locked work that cannot be opened by the average individual.
A common understanding is that one cannot begin to study Kabbalah until you reach the age of 40.
What I mean by a locked work is that the way that it's written, the way that Kabbalah is written, it's pretty much encoded in a very cryptic language in order to keep it away from the masses. This is one of the ancient protocols of the Kabbalah was to relegate it to a very exclusive group of students. Very exclusive group of students that had gone through years of study. It was being 40 years of age, as well as being well-versed and learned in all areas of Judaism. In biblical texts, in Talmudic texts, in Midrashic texts, in Jewish legal texts. It's a person that was well-versed, an expert, if you will, in all of these texts, and was 40, was deemed to be appropriate to welcome into the circle of the mystics, of the Kabbalists. So it was accepted as the tradition that until one is 40 and one's mind is fully settled, it's not a good idea to introduce esoteric wisdom that might confuse or befuddle the student.
Basically, Kabbalists and people that passed on to the initiates the sacred sciences, they kept this stuff locked up. It was inaccessible to people that were not worthy of it, that did not earn it, did not go through the proper channels, and did not do the proper study and get themselves prepared to accept this information. So those people were locked out of this, right? Now, in the Morals and Dogma lecture that we did, reading from Morals and Dogma, we talked about this pretty extensively. I think 20-30 minutes talked about this whole notion that this is how the sacred sciences have always been passed on. They've always been passed on in secret, through parable, through allegory. They were only given to the initiates. A lot of times they would put obstacles in front of that or try to dissuade people from getting to the sacred knowledge as a way to entice people on. But this whole idea is always, this is just how it's always been done. They've always passed on the sacred sciences to the quote-unquote elect or elite or initiates, okay? And that is supposed to be, once again, supposed to be the people that have basically just earned it, that have undergone the spiritual work and have prepared themselves spiritually and psychologically and philosophically and educated themselves, all of that sort of stuff, to accept these esoteric high truths, right? Now, I need to say this. So let me just read from Albert Pike a little bit once again, and he spends about 3-4 pages basically giving all the different examples from people all over the world, from different spiritual different faiths and different religious practices and different cultures and different languages and different time periods. They were all saying the same thing about the sacred arts, the sacred sciences, the esoteric wisdom. You lock it up, you keep it, so now, number one, it isn't destroyed, so that it will have proliferation, so that these people can be custodians of this knowledge, so that it can be passed on to the future generations, but so that it also doesn't get hijacked, destroyed, perverted from people that are unworthy of gaining that information. This is how this stuff has always been taught, okay? So, I'm going to give you a few examples once again from Morals and Dogma about all the different people that basically exclaimed this exact same thing that this one rabbi here, Shlomo Speichelstein, or whatever the fuck his name is, was saying. So, Tertullian, who died about AD 216, says in his apology, "None are admitted to the religious mysteries without an oath of secrecy." Clemens, Bishop of Alexandria, about in 191, says that he cannot explain the mysteries because he should thereby, according to the old proverb, put a sword into the hands of a child. This is the Christians, basically. The next one is the Christians talking about how when they were in the religious sects, they would actually talk in secret, in code. The Christians, early Christians, happened to be in company with strangers, more properly termed the profane. So if you weren't Christian, you were considered profane. They never spoke of their sacraments, but indicated to one another what they meant by means of symbols and secret watchwords, disguisedly as by direct communication of mind with mind and by enigmas. So basically, they just wrapped up the mysteries, disguised it with secret watchwords and symbols, so that it wouldn't be taught to the profane, those who haven't earned it. Origen, born AD 134, 135, answering Celsus, says, "Inasmuch as the essential and important doctrines and principles of Christianity are openly taught, it is foolish to object that there are other things that are recondite. For this is common to Christian discipline with that of those philosophers in whose teachings some things were esoteric and some things were exoteric." Bishop of Karsa says, "These mysteries the Church now communicates to him who has passed through the introductory degree, they are not explained to the Gentiles at all. There's mysteries that are not explained to the masses. And they're only explained to people that have undergone that spiritual work, that have self-initiated and put themselves on the path." Cyril, Bishop of Jerusalem, says, "The Lord spake in parables to his hearers in general, but to his disciples he explained in private the parables and allegories which he spoke in public." So in private he said one thing to the people that were initiated in the public, just like Jesus did. He told a parable, and those with eyes to see would see it. Those with ears to hear will hear it. The rest won't. St. Basil, the great bishop of Caesarea, "We receive the dogmas transmitted to us by writing, and those which have descended to us from the apostles, beneath the mystery of oral tradition. This is what the uninitiated are not permitted to contemplate." The uninitiated are not permitted. We don't allow you in. Bishop of Constantinople says, "You have heard as much of the mystery as we are allowed to speak openly in the ears of all. Our mysteries are not to be made known to strangers." I'm going to give you just a few more examples. St. Ambrose, Archbishop of Milan, says, "All the mysteries should be kept concealed, guarded by faithful silence, lest it should be inconsiderably divulged to the ears of the profane. Beware of casting pearls before swine." Saint Augustine, the guy that supposedly said God is whose center everywhere and circumference nowhere. This is what he has to say about the mysteries. St. Augustine, Bishop of Hippo, says, "We are now to discourse to you of the sublime mysteries, which none are qualified to hear, but those who, by the Master's favor, are made partakers of them. To have taught them openly would have been to betray them. To teach the mysteries openly would be to betray the mysteries, the tradition of the mysteries." Okay? One more. Saint Cyril of Alexandria says, "These mysteries are so profound and so exalted that they cannot be comprehended by those who are not enlightened." So, once again, the whole point is just like that rabbi was saying, and I wanted to give many examples there, right, from Morals and Dogma, is that there's a long-standing tradition of basically the sacred knowledge, esoteric sciences being locked up so that they wouldn't be perverted or distorted, only to be given to the initiates, only to be given those that are worthy. Now, I'm saying this because the reason I have to do this, I have to talk about that, is because I'm giving today a 3-4 hour lecture on Kabbalah, where I'm opening the mysteries. We're looking at the treasure chest, and I'm saying, hey, you know what? I know the code to that treasure chest. I'm going to unlock that treasure chest. I'm going to open the treasure chest, and I'm going to say, hey, everybody, come on in and take a look at it. So, just as that rabbi said, he's like, the great mystics or rabbis or whatever thought at one point to, open up the floodgates, make it accessible to the masses, right? Okay, well, in my opinion, I think that the world needs help, and maybe this will help some people. Maybe this will help guide people on their path back to God. But I also say that the world needs help, so I want to unleash this on people as well, and I want to help people out. But I also want to say if they're going to go and unleash that knowledge to their people, meaning that rabbi was opening up the mysteries of the Kabbalah to the Jews, to the Orthodox Jews, who, as you saw by that Chabad guy, says, well, God is only within us. The rest of the Goyim are on a lower level, but we're on the higher level. Well, I'm here to unleash this mystery. I'm going to go to that treasure chest. I'm going to put in the code, which is 666. I'm going to put in the code, and I'm going to open the treasure chest, and I'm going to say, everybody look inside. Because you know why? Because I think that ideology and that theology that they have is bullshit. God is within every single human being, and I want everybody to know. So that's why we're doing this today, okay? So normally, maybe 50 years ago, if I would have come on this information, I would have probably kept my mouth shut. Maybe 100 years ago, I might have kept my mouth shut. But now, not today, my friends. Today, we are in a sad fucking state in this world, and any help you can provide, help. Okay? And that's why we're doing this lecture today. Okay.